Good afternoon and welcome to the City Club of Portland Friday Forum. I'm Pat McCormick, City Club President, and I'd like to welcome members and guests alike, those of you who are joining us here today in the Governor Hotel, and those of you who are listening on OPB radio or watching on Portland Community Media. Today, Metro President Tom Hughes will discuss the state of the region. But first, I want to thank our partners and sponsors, as well as tell you about upcoming City Club events. The generous support of City Club's corporate and media partners ensures that we put on the state's best civic programs week after week. I'd like to thank our media partners, including Oregon Business Magazine, and our Friday Forum spring corporate sponsors, Morel Inc., Northwest Natural, and Schwabe Williamson and Wyatt. We're grateful for your support and commitment to City Club's mission. I'd also like to thank today's event co-sponsors, the Alliance of African American Chambers of Commerce, the Beaverton Chamber of Commerce, Clackamas County Business Alliance, Columbia Corridor Association, Giacometti Partners and Benetti Partners, Greater Hillsboro Area Chamber of Commerce, Gresham Area Chamber of Commerce, and East Metro Economic Alliance, Hispanic Metropolitan Chamber, Roy J. Enterprises, Tigard Chamber of Commerce, Tualatin Chamber of Commerce, Venture Portland, West Columbia Gorge Chamber of Commerce, and the West Side Economic Alliance. Please join me in a warm round of applause for all of them. We will not have a Friday Forum next week, the Friday before Memorial Day weekend. The following Friday, May 31st, is the release of our Bike Transportation Report and a forum about the role of bikes play in our community. Tickets are now on sale for our upcoming Civic Salon series, where we will hear from provocateurs like Andy Proctor of Literary Arts, Mike Thielen from Feast. Our civic salons bring people together for enjoyment, education, the exchange of ideas, complete with good food and drinks. You can learn more about City Club events, purchase tickets, and become a member on our website, pdxcityclub.org. We will be having a question and answer session with Metro President Hughes at the end of today's program. Members, please come to the microphone to ask your question. For all the audience members, please locate the index cards at the center of your tables and write your questions on them during the forum. We will collect them prior to the start of the question and answer period. Deanna Palm, President of the Greater Hillsboro Area Chamber of Commerce, will introduce Tom Hughes. But first I want to tell you a little about her. Prior to this position, she served as Vice President of Information and Administrative Services for the Portland Metropolitan Chamber of Commerce for 18 years. Deanna is past chair of the Oregon State Chamber of Commerce, a Western Association of Chambers of Commerce Executive Committee member, and a member of the Board of Directors of the Hillsboro Community Foundation, and is Vice Chair of the Board for Portland Community College. Deanna is pleased that the City of Portland so effectively serves the role, the City Club of Portland so effectively serves the role of convener and provides an opportunity for important dialogue around regional issues that impact us all. Please join me in welcoming Deanna Palm to the stage.
Good afternoon. This is actually a very unique opportunity for me. In working with Tom as many years as I did, he always had a bigger title than I did, so he always got to come to the microphone first, which was a really unique experience. So the first time that I met Tom many years ago, we were both invited to provide comments for a grand opening of a retail development that we were doing, and I was about a month into the job. Showed up at the scene, sat next to Tom, had a little chat, noticed he didn't have any notes or anything. And I'm like, do you have any talking points that you're going to reference? He said, I'm a teacher. I stand in front of a high school class every single day. This is I'm going to be okay with this. I'm good with this. Well, I was very nervous, and I'm sure that Tom could tell by the shaking of my papers. So he said, well, let's just walk through what you're going to do, what you're going to talk about. So I walked through and kind of touched on the high points, and he was so supportive and, so encouraging. And he said, "You're just hitting all the right marks. This is great. You are going to be wonderful." And I was so touched by the kindness that he showed me at that point. Shortly thereafter, Tom was called to the podium, and where he delivered my speech. And I remember, and it must have been the horrified look on my face as he was walking away from the microphone, that he kind of shrugged and gave me that sort of silly little chuckle that he does, which I love and know so well. He's like, "Yeah, sorry about that. It seemed really familiar to me as I was saying it." Yeah, that was the moment, and many times after that I uttered those dreaded words when I approached the podium. I got nothing. So the formal introduction of Mr. Hughes: Tom was elected Metro President in November 2010 and inaugurated in January 2011. He was elected to Metro Council on a platform that emphasized jobs and economic development, and since taking office has worked to build strategic partnerships with public and private stakeholders from across the Portland metro region, carefully navigating an urban growth area expansion and advance the Columbia River Crossing project. Tom's first experience in serving elective office began in 1976 when he won a seat on the city council of his hometown, Hillsboro, which is the 5th largest city in Oregon. He served on the council, Hillsboro's Planning Commission, and served as a member of Hillsboro's Planning and Zoning Hearings Board and on Hillsboro High School's School Budget Committee. Tom served as mayor of Hillsboro from 2001 through 2008. Under his leadership, the city made significant investments in community infrastructure, building the nation's first Gold LEED certified city hall, the Civic Center, opening the new main branch of the Hillsboro Public Library, and creating the Glenn and Viola Walters Cultural Arts Center. Tom has traveled internationally to attract companies and green jobs to Oregon, including trade visits to Japan, Spain, Germany, and Amsterdam. He helped permanent jobs to locate and expand in Hillsboro, including the recruitment of SolarWorld and Genentech and Intel's developmental facility. He currently serves as an appointee to the Governor's Solutions Steering Committee. Tom is married to Gail since 1969. They have lived in Hillsboro for 40 years. They have 2 daughters, Kristen and Karen. He serves on the boards of Community Action Organization of Washington County, the Hillsboro Community Foundation, the Hillsboro Hospital Authority, and the governing board of the Bright Brain Initiative. He is a member of the Rotary Club and the local Chamber of Commerce. He is a member of In April 2009, the city renamed the plaza at City Hall as the Tom Hughes Civic Center Plaza. And in May 2009, the Hillsboro Chamber of Commerce named him their Distinguished Citizen. It is my pleasure to welcome and introduce my dear friend and absolute best Chamber of Commerce proponent I've ever met, Tom Hughes.
So they were telling me before I got up here that a couple of weeks ago the mayor had some difficulty with the microphone. So I'm going to talk into it, but it almost sounds like I'm getting feedback. So maybe I'll be too good at it. Thanks, Deanna, and thanks not only for what you said, but for all the things you didn't say, which I'm always relieved. It is always nice to follow Deanna to the podium because I know the microphone's going to be set at just about the right level, even when I'm not using the same mic. So I want to thank you for the opportunity to use this forum to talk about my views on the state of the region. A special thanks to Sam Adams for agreeing to change the normal sponsorship arrangement for the City Club and allow the Metro Regions Chambers of Commerce to co-sponsor this event. And an even greater thanks to the leadership of those collective chambers for their willingness and even enthusiasm at stepping up to that effort. We sent out an email to those organizations proposing the idea of co-sponsorship And a little over an hour later, we had 7 of them that had already stepped up and reserved their tables. Responses since then have been equally supportive. And my motive here was pretty simple. I want to give you a report today, and in that report I want to talk about our progress at building a regional economic development plan. And I don't think that any discussion about the economic future of the region should happen without including the chambers and other business organizations in the region. They are vital allies in this effort, and I believe that their presence today indicates an eagerness to participate in that discussion. The region's business and community leaders need a regional forum to discuss these issues, and I think with Sam's leadership that the City Club will increasingly be that forum. With that said, let's talk about the state of the region. I think that one of the most exciting changes over the last year has been the steady improvement of our economy. Our region is positioned to be a leader in economic growth if we build off of our strengths: a strong creative class, an important hub of international trade and exports, a leadership position in sustainability, and a robust regional economic development strategy that focuses on the 4 traded sector industry clusters that we have in this region: clean technology, traditional and advanced manufacturing, athletic and outdoor gear and apparel, and computer electronics and software. Why focus on traded sector jobs? First, traded sector industries help us bring wealth into the region by designing products here that we sell in other places. Intel chips and Keen shoes, for example. In addition, jobs in the traded sector pay very good wages, often higher than average in our region. And this is crucial because the Portland region has fallen behind comparable regions around the country in terms of our average wage for the past decades. So while recovery has been slower than any of us would like, interestingly enough, the economic rebound is happening in our region faster than most other parts of the country. And I think part of that success and much of our prospects for future growth are based on the fact that we're kind of finally getting our act together as a region to compete globally with other regions from around the world. And part of that getting our act together has been the progress we have made with Greater Portland, Inc., the region's public-private economic development entity. Through Greater Portland, Inc., we have put a plan in place that builds on our strengths, has practical set of strategies, and has measurable outcomes. Greater Portland, Inc. now coordinates our region's strategic recruitment efforts, working with local and state economic development staff and leaders in the private sector. GPI, as it is called, has also developed a very compelling branding campaign to sell the region to companies, as well as a Faces of Business campaign that tells the story of many of our brightest entrepreneurs. I would encourage you to go to the Greater Portland, Inc. website and look at those 2 campaigns. They're very impressively done, and again, draw on the talented advertising community that we have in this region to sell the story of Portland. One element of Greater Portland, Inc.'s efforts that I would like to highlight is the Metropolitan Export Initiative. It is an opportunity presented to the region by the work of then-Mayor Sam Adams and his staff, and we were selected because of their work by the Brookings Institute as one of the 4 regions in the country to develop a plan to grow our economy by expanding our exports. The Portland area was chosen because we have had remarkable success at increasing our exports. Today, about 20% of the gross regional product is in the form of exported goods and services. We were recently ranked 2nd in the nation amongst regions in growth of our exports. So the Metropolitan Export Initiative is organized within GPI, and I have the honor of co-chairing the advisory group along with Jill Island from Intel, which is the state's leading exporter. Our goal is to double our exports from $21 billion per year today to $42 billion per year in 5 years. We doubled our exports from a little over 10 to 21 billion in the last 10 years. We want to double that again in the next 5 years. which is very ambitious. In the process of doing that, we think we can create somewhere in the neighborhood of 103,000 new jobs. So part of that strategy has been to leverage our already strong traded sector clusters, for which we are famous, the ones I just mentioned: outdoor and sports apparel, clean tech, advanced manufacturing, computer, electronics, and software. The export strategy also places great emphasis on helping small and medium-sized companies that may have perceived exporting as too big a hurdle. Greater Portland, Inc. works to connect these companies to the assistance that they need to enter the global market. Key players in this strategy have to be the chambers of commerce. No institution works better with those small and medium-sized businesses than the chambers around the region. Another element of the export initiative is promoting what Greater Portland brands as "We Build Green Cities." It's part of the clean tech cluster, particularly emphasizing our green development service industries, our architects, our engineers, our landscape developers, who are pioneering successful, sustainable construction practices. I was pleased to travel to Japan last month with a group from Oregon to promote We Build Green Cities. I delivered a message that partly as a result of the land use policies that we have adopted in the metro region, which place emphasis on sustainability, that we now have a construction industry building within that environment that has developed skills and services that are marketable around the globe to other cities who are interested in doing that. In Japan, we had a conversation with the leading land developers in Japan, and spoke at a seminar that attracted over 300 interested participants. This is but one example of how Portland's reputation, which is really our region's reputation, is a marketable export commodity. Following our trip, 2 of the leading land developers in Japan have already made contact with PDC to set up future conversations, and one of them has already visited the region to see for themselves what we're talking about. The policy environment we have established as a state and a region promotes a level of sustainable growth that cities around the world are looking to for best practices. Our work to maintain a tight urban growth boundary, our work on transportation planning, the work we are doing right now on climate, these are policy decisions that have created a market for green buildings. As we work to meet the state's mandates to reduce tailpipe emissions, we will no doubt be deepening the market for sustainable goods and sustainable services. As the rest of the world works to catch up, the We Build Green Cities brand should help us grow that market. Another lesson from my experience in recruiting companies is that when we recruit, we land companies based on our reputation as a region. I remember when I was mayor of Hillsboro, I was having dinner one night in Osaka, Japan, with the CEO of a company that had just opened a facility in Hillsboro. And he told me that the final decision to site that facility had come down to Portland versus Phoenix. And he had chosen Portland because Portland State University had a sister university relationship with a university in the hometown of the company's founder. Thus, he felt there was a spiritual connection between Portland and his company. Even as a rookie mayor, I fortunately was smart enough to stifle my natural instinct to point out that he had actually located in Hillsboro. To all of our benefit, he brought his company to Portland, the Portland region, and we're all better off for his having done that. I think that lesson must have stuck because the recent announcement about Nike's plans for expansion gave me nothing but pure pleasure. Knowing that Nike would create more good jobs in our region was an exciting thing to hear, and I've got to tell you that I felt neither glee nor disappointment about where in the region those jobs were going to be located. A win for one of us is a win for all of us, and when we market the region, we are marketing all parts of the region. Now, While staying on the subject of our economic future, I want to shift topics just a bit. Another effort that Metro has participated in is the search for a way to fill the gap between available resources and the cost of providing the infrastructure to support economic growth. This vital project has been undertaken by business leaders from around the region, organized in the Community Investment Initiative. Attracting jobs and working to retain companies in our region is one important part of our economic development efforts. Equally important is building and maintaining the roads and bridges, water and sewer pipes, libraries and parks, preparing industrial land to attract companies to locate and expand here, maintaining and upgrading critical freight routes, and making our city centers attractive places to live. These are all important preconditions for our job recruitment work, and these critical components of our region's infrastructure are woefully underfunded. A study that Metro conducted 5 years ago shows that the cost to build and maintain our region's infrastructure as we grow will be between $27 and $41 billion. And we have only about half of the amount available to our state and local governments. We know the federal government will not bail us out. Federal funding for critical infrastructure has been on the decline for decades now, and the future back in D.C. does not look bright. Our state struggles year in and year out just to adequately fund schools and higher education. So really, the future of our infrastructure, our roads, bridges, parks, libraries, sewers, and water systems is going to be up to us in the region. If it's going to happen, we're going to have to find a way to make it happen with resources that we can develop right here in the region. And we are fortunate to have a dedicated group of private sector and community leaders heading up the Community Investment Initiative, or CII as it's known. The CII has divided the effort into subsets and will report out to the region later this summer. One of the community investments proposals envisions the creation of a regional infrastructure enterprise, which will help organize public and private financing for catalytic infrastructure projects in the region. The CII group will identify a couple of pilot projects before launching that program, and that will be announced sometime middle of the summer. A second group within the CII has been looking at a way to help all communities in the region become development ready for potential economic opportunities. This means working with local jurisdictions to increase the speed of permitting and land development procedures. They have been working on a pilot project with Oregon City that has shown interesting and promising results. And then a third CII group has been studying the state of school buildings around the region. While many groups are already working on how to improve the programs offered by the schools of our state and region, the CII group chose to focus on existing buildings and the ongoing maintenance of those school facilities. The group has worked with Metro staff to develop a tool that offers great promise in allowing decision makers within the region more complete information as they make decisions about how to get the most out of our region's school infrastructure. The efforts by CII is another example of how we can best utilize one of the greatest resources in our region, the creativity of our private sector and their willingness to give generously of their time to make the region better. Metro has not directed, nor have we led these efforts. Rather, we have tried to facilitate and support them. That has created some discomfort amongst some of our elected leadership and some of our supporters. I can only say to them that the proof of the pudding is in the tasting. The chefs at the Community Investment Initiative are not done cooking yet, and we should wait for the results before we render our final judgment on how good a process that's been. Solving a challenge like adequately funding and maintaining our roads, bridges, parks, libraries during these times of changing views about what the government's role is an increasingly complex task. And I would not expect any group, public sector, private sector, or combination of both, to answer those questions quickly or without high levels of collaboration. But if we do not begin to address the issues of funding and maintaining our critical infrastructure, we will, over time, become a less attractive place for companies to locate and expand. A strategy for fixing and building up our infrastructure is really another key part of the region's economic development approach. While I'm on the topic of really big challenges that our region must address, I want to discuss the issue of our workforce and demographic changes. The physical assets of our communities help determine our quality of life, which is definitely a part of how we brand and sell ourselves. The quality and skill of our workforce is another very important asset. When I visited with Daimler and Adidas in Germany, we heard that one of the major reasons that they stay with their headquarters in Portland is that the quality of the design and engineering workforce that they find here. Daimler might be able to make their Western Star line of trucks more cheaply elsewhere, but they can't attract the engineering talent that they need, and they know if they move that facility out of Portland, they'll lose a fair number of their 400 engineers that they have working over at their facility here. And so they keep it here in order to keep that valuable resource. Adidas said that the unique talent pool that we have in designing apparel here in Portland is a major reason why, when they recently acquired Reebok, for example, in Boston, they were not tempted to move and consolidate all of their fish in the Boston market, because they know that they can't get the kind of design talent that we have in this area. So we've been able to cultivate young, talented people and also to import talent to our region. What's the tagline? This is the place where young people go to retire. Looking into the future, we face both an enormous challenge and a great opportunity in the challenging nature of our region's population. Like many parts of the country, the makeup of our residents is changing fast. In the Portland metropolitan area, Latinos are the fastest growing ethnic group, increasing last decade by 67%. That compares to an increase of 44% amongst Asian Pacific Islanders, 16% amongst African Americans, and 9% amongst Caucasians. Right now, the median age of the white population is 40 years old, while the median age of the Latino population is 24 years old. So our young workforce is changing in complexion at an exponential rate. I view this as an opportunity for our region and for our economy. The challenge is that right now, education outcomes for Latinos in particular, but also for African Americans and Native Americans as well, are not in line with those of Caucasian youth. For example, if we look at the statistics, only 5% of the white adults in the region do not have a high school degree, whereas 42% of the Latino adults do not have a high school diploma. We must ensure that all of our young people have the opportunity to participate in the economic growth of our region, and that we're providing the tools and the training to prepare a workforce that is ready for the jobs of tomorrow. We will continue to import some of our talent from other places, hopefully not to retire, but to work and put their entrepreneurial skills to use. But we can neither afford to, nor would we want to, leave large sections of our existing population in an economic second class. Like with the infrastructure challenge I mentioned earlier, this is an area where Metro is not in the lead, but it is an area where, because of our geographic scope, we should be helping to convene and to facilitate discussions about how we address this challenge. Today, I simply want to highlight the need, understanding, and address the issue of our region's changing ethnic makeup. This is an arena, like infrastructure, where it will take many of us working in collaboration to identify and pursue the right strategies. So these are a couple of ways that Metro is involved in collaborating group efforts aimed at increasing job growth and the health of our regional economy. Let me talk about a couple of efforts where Metro is more directly in the lead position. First, I want to note that Metro will continue to provide the region with great land use planning In fact, our staff is already preparing for the next urban growth boundary decision in 2015. Doesn't seem like that far away. We will also continue to work in developing long-range transportation plans to keep us on the cutting edge of transportation policy in the nation. And I understand the City Club is working right now on active transportation, and hopefully you've had a chance to look at the regional active transportation plan that Metro Councilor Catherine Harrington has been leading on our behalf. I think you'll find that it has some information that would be useful for us to share back and forth. And Metro will continue our efforts to collect the region's garbage. I'm sure we're all happy about that. While reducing waste and increasing our rates of recycling. You could spend an entire Friday forum on the solid waste roadmap that our staff is developing, a roadmap that charts the future of our region's waste. As you got an open set next week, you might think about plugging that in. All these areas of work and more, such as our cemeteries and the zoo, are areas where our staff are providing excellent service, in fact, award-winning services in some instances. But I want to highlight just a couple of additional areas that relate to our economic development strategy and where Metro is in the lead. The first is the effort to build a hotel large enough and close enough to the Oregon Convention Center to serve as a headquarters for those organizations wanting to bring larger conventions here. This is a project that has been controversial in the past and has died more times than the average alley cat. I think, however, that we are perilously close to being successful this time. Negotiations are in their final stages with a developer and a hotel chain to locate a hotel with 600 rooms right across from the convention center. The benefits of this project could be truly amazing. Construction jobs for starts, followed by hundreds of permanent family wage jobs with benefit for workers in the hotel. Tens of millions of additional dollars pumped into the economy from the 7 to 12 additional conventions per year. There are some who doubt that these benefits will be realized, but I am convinced by the dozen or so convention organizers that I have talked to who have said two things. One, we have clients who desperately want to bring their convention to Portland, and two, they'll never come until you have a hotel. This project is important for the region. It's important for that part of the region that is underdeveloped and underserved, but it is important for the region as a whole. This convention center hotel is long overdue, and the tourist portion of our as a tool for our economic development strategy, and we expect to overcome whatever hurdles are put in our way and finally build this hotel. Thank you. The second project that Metro has more of a direct lead on is the effort to obtain and maintain valuable open spaces around the region. Back in the 1990s, Multnomah County gave Metro its portfolio of parks, along with a golf course and the Expo Center, and 14 cemeteries, by the way. Thanks, Multnomah County. That small park program grew to become a premier natural area and habitat protection program, as the voters of the region twice directed Metro to obtain and protect targeted habitat and watershed. We now own 16,000 acres of habitat, water quality features, and open space. Those acres are an integral part of the quality of life in the region. Our ability to leave our children a legacy of clean water, natural areas and trails, and habitat for fish and other wildlife is a vital part of what we market when we market this region. Metro has been a good steward of these lands, and we will continue to do the voters' bidding in purchasing habitat that needs to be protected. We've used Metro's general fund, outside grants, partnerships, as well as volunteers to support restoration on dozens of forests, prairies, wetlands, and stream banks across the region. Virtually every Metro natural area is healthier today than it was when Metro purchased it. Our bond program cannot pay for ongoing restoration and maintenance of these lands, so the Metro Council explored other ways of paying for maintenance. We talked with the mayors around the region about a park district. We convened an advisory committee, and we surveyed the public. The best answer we could come up with is a small 5-year property tax to pay for the most crucial restoration projects that protect habitat, water quality, and fish. These are projects that will cost us more in the future if we don't tackle them now, and the cost of the levy for an average homeowner would be less than $20 per year. I am very pleased that the Portland Tribune and the Willamette Week have both endorsed the levy, Measure 26-152. That other paper just got it wrong. For those of you who think that the parks and natural areas are just nice features that have nothing to do with economic development, you probably wouldn't have thought that a spiritual connection between a sister university and the hometown of a founder of a company would have anything to do with economic development either, but they do. We need to maintain the quality of life in this region, to maintain our competitive edge as we work to attract companies here and to keep them here. For this reason, we need the resources to continue to maintain our natural assets, and you can help with a yes vote on Measure 26-152 in the current election. And I will conclude my soapbox presentation here by saying I'm Tom Hughes, and I approve that message. So let me wrap up today by again thanking City Club for hosting this event, and by thanking the business leaders from around the region who co-sponsored today's forum. The state of our region is improving. I believe our future economic success depends upon our ability to work together as a region, across jurisdictional boundaries, across the boundaries of public-private sector. We face significant challenges. Staying economically competitive in a global economy, maintaining and building core infrastructures, opening up opportunities to all of our residents, and protecting and restoring our natural areas. And when we collaborate, when we work together, we can accomplish great things. We have shown this to be true when Greater Portland, Inc. and the Export Initiative were formed. I believe the same will be true with the work of the Community Investment Initiative. I look forward to working with all of you on these and other challenges in the years ahead. Thank you very much.
Thank you, President Hughes. And now, if you have a written question on an index card, please hold it up high so that City Club staff can collect it from you. Thank you. The first question for our speaker, as always, will be from our Friday Forum host, Deane Funk. Deane is Manager of Local Government Affairs for Portland General Electric and serves on the boards of Travel Portland and East Metro Economic Alliance. He has been a City Club member since 1992. Deane?
I've been working in Gresham and East County since 1994, and there's been a pervasive undercurrent that still persists that the East Side is treated like the poor stepchild in the regions. Its assets are many. It has the largest available inventory of industrial land in the region, a transportation grid that flows smoothly at all hours, is adjacent to an international airport, the Columbia Gorge, and Mount Hood. What would you say from your vantage point now and your experience as Hillsboro's mayor to East County leaders about that perception, and what's the first thing they should do about changing it or getting their fair share of regional public investment?
Thanks, and I think that's a fair question, and also one that I hear a lot when I go out in East County. It has caused me actually to think a lot about why the West Side has done as well as it has relative to other parts of the region. And I think one of the secrets to the West Side that actually is pretty simple, and it's been a message that I've delivered as often as I can to the East Side also, is that on the West Side, we just get along. We work together, we collaborate, we do things together, we support each other, we're happy with each other's successes. Things happen smoother. I think that message and that model for success is catching on the East Side. And I think there's some very, very encouraging signs. I think the cooperative effort of the 4 cities on the East Side corridor project has been exceptional. And a lot of that goes to the persistent leadership of my colleague Shirley Craddock, who gave hours and hours of her time on that project, and residents, the mayors of those 4 cities. And I think, again, that they're going to see that when they work together on a series of projects, the right projects get done, and they get done faster, and the investment is made in the East Side. I think the recent purchase of land on the East Side by the Port of Portland gives them an opportunity that you don't find in other parts of the region, which is large tracts of land under single ownership. And that's going to pay a huge benefit in terms of economic development going forward. And again, I think that we are positioned now. We are beginning to see a return of companies looking at the Portland metropolitan area as a place to relocate their businesses and as a place to expand. That we're beginning to see that heavy enough and big enough that it'll support all parts of the region.
We will now take questions from the floor. As always, asking questions at the Friday Forum microphone is a benefit of City Club membership, and membership is open to everyone. We invite members to the microphone to ask their questions. Before asking your question, please identify yourself as a City Club member, and please only ask one question, and ask the question as succinctly as possible. If I flash the infamous question mark card, it means wrap up your question. Thank you.
Win Wakala, City Club member. I know the Metro has requirements on the cities for how many dwellings per acre, and the cities on the outside, when they take in new property in the urban growth boundary, they push for heavier density in those areas, which means inside the cities you have small houses on huge lots, and further out you have big houses on just really small lots, which creates more transportation problems because those people are further out. It's like a donut effect. What can you require the cities to keep their density within their old boundaries, or something to solve this problem?
A couple of things that I think have been happening with, particularly with the last urban growth boundary expansion that is currently lying around someplace in the Court of Appeals. The first secret, I think, to getting around or to overcoming the problem that you're talking about is that we were bringing in large enough sections of land in that expansion so that it can be planned as a whole community. And therefore, within that area, you can actually plan density, you spread the density requirements in a more balanced way. I think we need to explore, quite frankly, the ability to do density transfers and other kinds of things around the region to avoid the kind of difficulty within a jurisdiction, to avoid the kind of difficulties that you're talking about. We have completed, as soon as the court completes the decision on the urban reserves, an urban reserve package that projects an expansion of the urban footprint of the region by 11% over the next 50 years, when we anticipate an expansion of the population by 80%. So taking advantage of maximum efficiencies in using the land for all of the uses that we have is going to be really important, and I think working with our local jurisdictions going forward to find, and with the development community, to find creative ways of doing that is going to be important as we go forward.
Dan Kepler, City Club member. In 2 weeks, the City Club is going to release a report on the role of bicycle transportation in the city of Portland. I wanted to hear your thoughts about the role that bicycle transportation could play in the region. You alluded to it a little bit in your speech.
Well, again, I think that the active transportation role as a component of our transportation is going to be a key role. I mean, it's one of the things that I've kind of graduated from sneering and snorting at bicyclists as I drive by them to say, well, that's another car that's not stuck in traffic with me. And so I've come to a new appreciation of them. I think that in the outside areas that two things are going to have to happen. One is a connection with transit so that your bike ride, for example, is 1.5 miles to 2 miles to the station area, and then you're loading your bike on Max and riding to within 1.5 miles or 2 miles of your workplace. And I think that has really increased the usefulness and the effectiveness of bicycle transportation in the region. And I think other parts of the region, I know in talking to the folks out in Washington County, that a lot of the misstep projects that they're looking at in Washington County will include protected bike lanes and other kinds of things that will encourage bicycle traffic as commuters in the Washington County area too. So I think that message is beginning to get around the region, and I think transportation designers around the region are seeing the value of building that in as we try to struggle with these very expensive infrastructure costs that we're all going to have to pay for over the next 20 years.
Leslie Johnson, City Club member. For reasons I've never quite understood, Metro, in addition to the infrastructure and regional planning kind of issues that you've described, ended up with responsibility for Washington Park Zoo and the Portland Center for the Performing Arts and the Coliseum kind of Rose Quarter involvement. And I don't think I heard you mention anything about PCPA or the zoo. I wonder if you could touch a little bit on how those fit in the other areas, how those two monuments are doing. Let us know.
I think the answer to the first part of your question is how the heck do we get them is kind of a collective series of being in either the right or the wrong place at the right or wrong time. I'm not exactly sure. I think being the regional government, as local governments began to look at some of those facilities and say, this is too expensive for a single local government to support, particularly when people are coming in from all around the region and using the facility. And the zoo is the classic example of that, where City of Portland tried a number of ways to support the zoo and finally said, let's elevate it to a regional property and give Metro jurisdiction over it. The interesting thing about the zoo is we have, I believe, about 1.6 million people come through the Oregon Zoo a year. I was just over at the Ueno Zoo in the middle of Tokyo 2 weeks ago, and they were telling me that pre-Panda, they got 2.6 million people through there, and post-Panda, they're up now to 4.8 million. Pandas do a lot for your attendance, apparently. But if you think about that, that still is 4.8 million people in a metropolitan area that has in excess of 15 million people compared to our zoo in a metro area of 2.4 million. So our zoo proportionately attracts more people from the region than the Ueno Zoo in Tokyo or the Munich Zoo. I actually, as I travel now, I get to see a lot more zoos, which is a good thing, I think, usually. And proportionately, our zoo does way better than any of those. I've suddenly come to the conclusion, as I've been in this job for a while, that what started out as an accident that left our agency, a regional agency, in charge of a convention center, an expo center, management of the Portland Centers for Performing Arts, a zoo, 16,000 acres of open space and habitat, and a trail system potentially that could connect all of those things, might not be a bad thing for the tourist economy of this particular region. That maybe having one entity that's able to help coordinate all of that stuff is really not such a bad idea. And so I think we need to begin to think along those lines as we move forward.
Ted Kay, City Club member, with a follow-up question to that. In the 1940s, a city club study led to the creation of Portland's Forest Park. A couple of years ago, a club study found that the city of Portland had been a poor steward of Forest Park and recommended a regional approach to its management. Question: if funding were not an issue, should Metro manage Forest Park?
Talk to me Wednesday of next week, and we may have a different answer. It again is a typical. I think Forest Park is a valuable asset for the region, and I think that that Metro should enter into some discussion about how to make sure that better care is taken of that asset than Portland has been able to take care of it. And I don't fault City of Portland. It has, it's an enormous undertaking to try to maintain that park. That having been said, I'm not sure. I can see actually a few of my staff out there, and I think they would probably like faint if I said, "Oh yeah, we'll take over the whole thing." But I think we ought to have a discussion about how it is going to be maintained and what a regional role would look like if we were to play a regional role in that. But again, that discussion is a lot easier with a yes vote and some cash going forward after Wednesday. So.
Ann Madden, forum member, and Tom, you do play well with others. How are we doing with the state of Washington, and how are we doing with that Columbia River crossing?
Well, I have a lot of trouble following the Oregon legislature, and I find I have almost no success at all following the Washington legislature. And so I'm probably not the best expert to talk about what's happening in Washington State. I hear both good news and bad news. The bad news, obviously, is the legislature has not taken up the funding, their share of the funding for the bridge. I think the good news is we think that there may be another way to do their share of the funding that doesn't involve the legislature doing that, but we'll have to see what that is and where it goes. So I give up on predicting political outcomes. I thought I was going to lose, for example. So,
Greg McPherson, City Club member. The process of bringing the newest city in the metro area, Damascus, online has been a fraught one. That city has yet to produce a comprehensive plan, and there's been some talk about even disincorporating. Is there contingency talk about it or planning at Metro about what it will do if there's a failure of the planning process in Damascus?
Well, in some respects, part of that is out of our hands in that there is a substantial amount of state law that applies to what cities do or do not do about having comprehensive plan. My temptation is to suggest that the folks in Damascus pretty much have to solve that problem themselves. We have offered them and have provided them with lots of technical assistance in terms of doing that. I think we worked very closely with their staff on preparing the comprehensive plan that actually got acknowledged by LCDC and then was referred to and defeated by a vote of the people. I just think that that issue will never be solved by outsiders. It pretty much has to be solved by the residents of Damascus. And it may lead to a conflict similar to the conflict in the other Damascus.
Steve Shell, member. Steve Shell, member this line.
There you go.
Damascus raises an interesting question because of jobs housing balance and where we are with regard to location of industrial lands. Damascus, the hope was that we could get industrial lands out in Damascus and thereby create a better jobs housing balance. Transfer of density doesn't really do any good if you're really trying to cut down on trips back and forth between jobs and housing through that. So my question is, if you got Hayden Island blocked, you got the expansion, the urban expansion, kind of stymied right now, and Damascus is not going forward very well. how is that extra industrial land going to be made up in terms of the 11% versus 80% number you just gave?
Well, one of the things that happened, I think, as a result of Damascus, quite frankly, and I can remember having a conversation years ago with Mike Burton, who used to refer to Damascus as the non-expansion expansion, that you can expand the land out there, but there's not the resources available to put the infrastructure in place that you need in order to develop the industrial component of the Damascus area. And so therefore that largely was put on the in the inventory, but it really was done so almost with a wink wink nudge nudge, because there's 19,000 acres out there that aren't going to be used, I would say, in my lifetime, but I would even extend it to some of your lifetimes too, because I think yours is going to be longer. But I don't think that's a problem that's going to be solved. One of the things that we did with the last urban growth report on the capacity issue was we factored in an econometric model that said, okay, you've got land and it's zoned at a certain rate. What we had historically done was we had simply factored that into the capacity at whatever the zoned capacity was. And what we started doing was saying, what are the economic realities of having that property available in the next 20 years to develop, and where it's not available, let's don't count it as part of the inventory. And I think we've kind of moved in that direction. So far, we have had the LCDC approved it, and we suspect that the Court of Appeals will approve it. And so if that's confirmed as an okay way to do things, then I think that will have some consequences in terms of looking at property where where the economics do not allow you to continue to think of that as industrial land. We have 300 acres in West Hayland Island, for example, that may, because of action by the City of Portland, be taken off the market as industrial land. Do we continue to count that 300 acres in our industrial inventory, or do we take it out of the industrial inventory and look for 300 acres someplace else? I think that the key to all of this is where we start the discussion with all of this, and this is just me, by the way, but I think we need to start all of this with a discussion about how much land do we need. And let's start there, and how can we use the land that's available, and how do we make, we can take up advantages of land that's within the urban growth boundary. We now have an inventory to look at where that land is, and we know some things we can do that will make more of that land available. But at the end of the day, if we have land that we're counting on for the economic growth of this community and we just flat can't use it, then we better find land that we can use to take up the slack.
Jeannie Crouch, City Club member. I want to circle back to the Columbia River crossing and ask you, what do you see as the implications for the region if that project is not done?
I didn't exactly hear. I heard the CRC part, and then my brain sort of went blank.
I'd like to hear your thoughts about what happens to the region if that project is not done.
Well, I think that it obviously creates a significant problem for the region, and the reason that I got involved in and was supportive of the CRC all the way back to when I first started, actually when I was mayor of Hillsboro, is the conversations that I had with the Port of Portland that were pretty frank and said, look, if we can't solve the problem of the future congestion at that bridge, we are going to undermine the ability of the Port of Portland to continue to act as an exporter or importer of goods and services through Portland. 1 out of every 7 jobs in the Portland area is almost directly dependent upon the port. We can't afford to lose the competitive advantage that the port has, which is their ability as a small port to get stuff into the port and out on a rail or a surface route to some point in the Midwest or East faster than any other port on the West Coast. That's been their competitive advantage so far. That's what keeps them from losing so much business to Tacoma and San Jose, or San Francisco, that they can't stay open. If we congest that area much more, as we anticipate that by 2035 it will be, then that port cannot function, nor can the Port of Vancouver. And so the job loss in this region of that happening is really an important feature of why we need to get this done. Now, that said, I quite frankly think that we're a whole lot closer than anybody believes to getting the financing together to do this. This project has great support from the administration. One of the things that we talk about when we talk about the changes back in D.C. is, oh, there are no more earmarks. There are no more earmarks. No, there are no more congressional earmarks. The earmarks are now coming from the administration. And on that level, we're at the top of the list. And one of the things that we can't afford to do is to move off the list, because that means another 10 to 15 years before we ever get back to where we are now. So we really need to push this project forward. Oregon has stepped up and done their share. I think Washington, in one way or another, is going to step up and do their share, and the federal funding will be there when we need it. So I actually think the project's going to go forward. Sometimes you have those kinds of fantasies about a lot of other things too, but in this particular case, I think there's some people who join me, and it's a joint fantasy that a bunch of us have. So I think I'm a little more encouraged about that.
Unfortunately, we've run out of time for further questions and have to stop for the day. Please join us on May 31st for our forum on bikes and bike transportation. And as we close for today, please join me in offering our sincere thanks to Metro President Tom Hughes. We are adjourned.